a little bit about the Ericsson family. In 1934, Lee's grandfather, Ariok Wentworth Ericsson, and his son, Jim, visited the Bahamas in search of a place having less rigorous winters, like many people, first of the snowbirds, less rigorous winters than Massachusetts because of Ariok's ill health. Ariok and his wife, Cecily, I think you say that, Macy Erickson of Swampscott, Maryland, bought a house, Glenwood, in East Hill Street, Nassau, in 1937. Glenwood is, I think, where the Royal Bank of Canada main office is. In 1937, Governor Sir Bede Clifford wrote to the Colonial Office in England, "I have the honor to report that an increasing number of American citizens have purchased or built homes for themselves in the Bahamas. I'm making inquiries regarding the prospects of being allowed to become British subjects. Recent examples are those of the old New England family, Ericksons, 7 in number, of whom the parents have a residence in Nassau, and 3 sons, Bill, Jim, and Doug, are developing the salt industry in Inagua, and have been in continuous residence in that lonely island for about a year. It seems to me that it would be in the interests of the colony to facilitate the naturalization of the better class of American families, such as the Ericksons, who not only have a residence, but a business in the Bahamas." This is a picture of Doug, Bill, and Jim Erickson. This is later than 1937. In 1935, the abandoned salt ponds of Inagua were acquired by the West Indian Chemicals Limited, an American company by the Ericksons. Before the industry collapsed after World War I, landowners in Inagua had led a luxurious life. Handsome cabs pulled by matching pairs of horses over the wide roadways of Matthewtown. Balls were given at midnight in the moonlight. Wines were brought from France and Spain for the wine cellars of the well-to-do, and one resident had a piano swung ashore from a clipper ship. The ladies wore silks and taffetas from Paris and lace from Brussels. The men had a cracked polo team. After the calamity struck, the owners left overnight. The salt ships stopped coming, and the native population sank into poverty. Matthewtown at that time looked desolate. The wide streets laid out symmetrically in a grid were overgrown with grass. Many buildings were in ruins, and yards covered with matted forests of cactus, sisal, and loose stones from walls that had fallen into the streets. By 1937, the company run by Ericksons was producing considerable quantities of salt and employing approximately 100 of the 700 people in Matthewtown. At that time, the steamers of the Royal Netherlands Line called at Inagua to embark stevedores for their journey to South America, and the mail steamer from Nassau to Inagua called at the Windward Islands of Exuma, Long Island, and sometimes Acklands. A report by Labour advisor Mr. Herbert McKinney, I don't know if it's any relation to a lady friend. Yeah, you're a McKinney, right? No relation. A report by Labour advisor Mr. Herbert McKinney in 1942 records his visit to Inagua. "I was amazed by the proportion of Mr. Erickson's organization at Inagua. The skeleton of the old town that they were rebuilding emphasizes the importance to the very life of the community, the work they are doing. The old town has fallen, hardly a sound roof on the island. I've never seen such desolation anywhere, and the Ericksons are setting such a splendid example to the community by sharing their privations and discomforts while the town is being rebuilt as a result of their efforts." Sketchbooks 5 and 6 of Diana Pullinger document that from the 14th to the 22nd of December 1937, she was in Nassau, and in January through May of 1938 in Inagua. where, Lee Erickson says, she was a companion to my mother and helped caring with my brother. And she managed to find a picture of Diana in a swimming costume looking after the little boy. Diana also developed a talent. She drew people at work, women clearing bush or breaking rocks to make roads, and Captain Reese wielding a saw or a jackhammer. But most of all, she revelled in the beauty of Onagwa, and the drawing of the banyan tree reflects her keen eye for detail. And actually, I was just looking at this picture the other day, the 1, 2, 3, 4th on the right. And if you see the trees, you can see the detail of the trees coming out again in the tree she drew later on. The visit to Onagwa was followed by a boat trip which took her to Haiti, and we have the Haitian scene here. To Haiti, Jamaica, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and Curacao. Quite a good journey. And I know that she also sailed on the Aquitania from the West Indies back to Britain. Sketchbook number 7 records that this boat trip took place in the month of June 1938. Sketchbooks 8 and 9 seem to have been used by Diana in tandem. Sketchbook 8 makes reference to the village of Zeno, which is in August 1938, a very pretty little village in Cornwall, and I guess there's an abbey, castle or abbey close by. And the Cotswolds in 1938. And in the Cotswolds we have a watercolor. It's in acrylic and it's a little bit disintegrating a little. So in 1938 she was in the Cotswolds. She did some anatomy at London Zoo in 1942. And during this period shows women and men in uniform engaging in card games, dances, concerts, and a visit to see fur. Sketchbook 9 indicates that at the latter part of 1938, she was back in England and seems to be involved in the war service. It has the labels camp, foreign service, and holidays. And I cannot tell whether this is just earlier than 1939 or 1940, around about that time. So there's some men, there's some soldiers obviously, drinking at the bar and having a jam session. A London scene in 1942. To me that looks like the speakers on Hyde Park Corner. I don't know if it is or not, but it would seem to be. Towards the end of the war, Diana seemed to earn a living as an illustrator, and she did illustrations for 3 books by Lawrence Pollock in his trilogy. Legal Fictions, a series of cases from Shakespeare, 1946. More Legal Fictions, a series of cases from the classics. And Final Legal Fictions, a series of legal cases from folklore and opera. This is one of the illustrations that Lee scanned and sent me. I've got to really thank Lee Erickson very much. It's quite funny. It's the probate divorce of Menelaus and Helen of Paris. And at the bottom it says, was this the face that launched 1,000 ships? And of course the lady didn't look quite so young as she was in the early days. A sketchbook with no number